traditions, we wanted to help establish a development-oriented Buddhism to assist the weak and poor in mobilizing and helping themselves. We were also concerned with the role of Buddhism and morals in morals and ethics. Our probably trained in the Dharma and the monastic disciplines could help to restore the Cambodian moral and ethical system through true Buddhist practice and teaching. They could serve the society. The aim of the 95 conference was to assess the role, needs, and possibilities of Buddhist women and donkeys in this resurrection of Cambodian Buddhism and the development of Cambodian Buddhist activism. The response of Cambodian women was to form the Association of the Donkeys and Laywomen of Cambodia and to take up the question of educating donkeys as a first priority. The actual situation of monks and donkeys was far from this, and there were many complaints. These ranged from complaints that people impersonating monks and donkeys were illegally begging in the markets to complaints that the scarce resource for the renewal of Buddhism in Cambodia should be given to the monks and not wasted on all women. But the potential of Cambodian women in general and of donkeys in particular is a visible feature and potential resource in the society. Women, as we know, constitute some vast majority of the elderly. According to the best estimates, no statistics are at all kept for donkeys. Some 5,000 Cambodian women are donkeys. This number is already comparatively large and can be expected to increase as more women leave their reproductive years behind. Providing for these women in a way which facilitates their spiritual development and ensures a modicum of stability for their survival is not a trivial issue. Nor are they without wisdom, commitment, and spiritual development. One needs only to witness the commitment and dedication the contingent of donkeys brings to Cambodia's annual Dhamma Yatra, the Peace Walk, to see how powerful a potential force they can be for the transformation of Cambodian life and the development of peace and justice in this country. One of the Heinrich Böll Foundation's primary goals in Cambodia, through the work of the Nuns Association, is to help establish a networking structure among the donkeys to share resources, information, and wisdom, and to make education in Dhamma more available to women. This work is expected to expand as the number of donkeys increases and was partly undertaken in the knowledge that gender imbalances and the aging of many women encourage them to make a commitment to the religious life. As the head of the Association of Donkeys and Laywomen, Donkey Piknarit had demonstrated yesterday that Cambodian donkeys had taken up the opportunity to develop their capacities with responsibility, alacrity, and commitment. Since the original conference, which attracted some 100 Cambodian delegates in addition to participants from such other Theravada countries as Thailand, Burma, and Sri Lanka, liaison offices have been set up in 10 provinces and a training center has been established near Udong, some 40 kilometers from Phnom Penh. Dr. Hema Gonatilake has helped to design training modules, including training in Dhamma and in issues of globalization and development. Training materials have been published and disseminated. Donkey Piknarit had outlined this development, but it is also worth mentioning the dedicated role of Ms. Chan Sapunwi, the executive director of the association. This has been a fruitful and deeply heartening 2.5 years. The alacrity of development within the Nuns Association and among the donkeys has also been recognized and supported by the Sangharajas of both Sanghanayakas, who have fully supported the association and who see education and trainings programs for donkeys as multiplying their human resources in the form of teachers, social counselors, health workers, human and women's rights workers, and community leaders. The long-term agenda behind these developments is not hard to see. The improvement of conditions for donkeys should also attract a greater proportion of younger and more educated women to religious life. These women, provided with real education and training, might not only become an important moral and spiritual force in Cambodia, but might, as in other Theravada countries, the Donjis themselves do not see this as an immediate issue, but rather one for the next generation, one which would have received adequate preparation for this responsibility. And in the words of one Donji expressed at the 5th conference, it sounds like this. Most of us are badly educated. We have to study first in order to be recognized as equal to monks in Cambodian society. We are not here to struggle for ordination as Buddhist nuns equal to men, as the Dashasil Matas in Sri Lanka. But we have to lay the groundwork for our daughters to be able one day to go and decide, like our sons, for or against the temple life. This is a long way to go, but we are taking some step towards this vision for our future. I'm very excited by these developments among Cambodian women and Cambodian Donjis, speaking both personally and on behalf of the Heinrich Böll Foundation. I'm honored to have been able to be part of facilitating this wonderful work which has been begun and is being continued and developed by the association. The Heinrich Böll Foundation is currently preparing to organize an interfaith conference of religious women within the context of an ongoing series of seminars called Equity in Unequal Relations. And I hope that the Foundation can count on the support and wisdom and experience of the Shakyadita participant in this important work. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here and for your kind attention. តទៅទំព័រ4ចប់ទៅបានខ្ញុំផ្ដើមទំព័រ1វិញ I just try to instruct my interpreter so they won't get lost. Reverend monks, sisters, nuns, ladies and gentlemen and friends, first, I would like to express my sincere welcome to you all for your interest in coming to my beloved homeland, the Kingdom of Cambodia, to gather together to talk issues which is very important to the rebuilding and the restoration of our culture and tradition that has been disrupted or covered up by the ashes of the 25-year-long war. I have mentioned culture and tradition. May I beg your indulgence to allow me to share with you a little bit of our tradition. Simple things such as, in each nation or each society, there is always a culture within a culture and a tradition. You too have your tradition and culture, and you love and you practice it, and you enjoy it, and you take pride in doing it. So do we. We welcome you warmly here, but we also would like to share with you that we do have the tradition and culture, and sometimes we would like to learn from you about your culture. In the same way, we hope that you can learn something from our tradition and culture. Sorry, this one bothers me. My theme today is about the Buddhism as a tool for human rights, women's rights, and democracy. Within the time limit, I would just be able to mention some or one or two of the tools for human rights and women's rights and democracy. The Cambodian Institute of Human Rights
has recognized the importance of placing concepts of human rights within the context of Buddhist teachings. In teaching ordinary citizens, our tactics draw upon the strength of Buddhist faith. We explain to the class the connection between Buddhism and human rights. We stress that Buddhist approach to life, with its emphasis on kindness, compassion, non-violence, and respect for people and all living things, captures the essence of human rights. Placing human rights in the context of Cambodia's Buddhist military men have told us that they now understand and appreciate human rights. Human rights educators in Cambodia, the long-standing devotion of the majority, our people, to Buddhism is undoubtedly our greatest resources. This is just to share with you that what has been done at the Institute, we follow the path of our great teacher, the Buddha. In discussing the relationship between Buddhism and human rights, it is important that we first understand the centrality and resilience of Buddhism within Cambodian culture and history. Buddhism in Cambodia, as you may know today, is deeply ingrained within the people and strikes a deep chord between people's heart and minds. Buddhist teachings provide us with rich indigenous reserves of teaching on human rights and nonviolence upon which we can draw in order to speak of these concepts. The Buddhist canon contains many references to what we would now term as human rights. Excuse me. The phrasing of human rights may be different from the modern human rights instrument or political theory, but the concepts are undoubtedly there. The Buddha taught kindness, compassion, and respect for peoples and other living things. We counseled non-violence. He forbade killing. He instead called upon people to develop a social outlook that is kind and compassionate. He told people to abstain from stealing and cheating, respecting the rights and property of others. Buddhist scriptures outlined rights related to political activity. Citizens had the right to participate in the political life of their state. In fact, citizens' participation was actively encouraged. The scriptures call for public assemblies and referenda in order to reach decisions within a community. In addition, monks and nuns were also required to participate in the governance of their community by means of frequent assemblies. There are even references to the concept of elected leaders, Mahasamatha, showing us that democracy and elections are resonance within Buddhism. Freedom of speech and assembly in schools of thoughts, and although the Buddha may have disagreed with what these schools were espousing, he did not try to suppress them. The Buddha was in fact remarkably tolerant of contending views and stated that tolerance was one of the most important duties of a kind. Buddhism emphasizes the equality of all people. The Buddha demonstrated his commitment to this principle by elevating Opali, a former barber and slave, to a powerful position within the community of monks. In doing so, he showed his rejection to the caste-based system of the time. Buddhist doctrine also places emphasis on justice and the rule of law. The Buddha clearly condemned the miscarriages of justice. We can see this in the Jakarta tale, in which an evil king, wanting the wife of a merchant for himself, trumps up charges against the merchant and has him executed. The king later realizes his sin and repents. The 10 duties of kings prescribe honesty and integrity as core value. The Buddha called for the peaceful settlement of dispute. This is a valuable point in teaching about non-violent dispute resolution. Non-violence is one of the 8 duties of a king. The Buddha showed this through his own example. One of the most famous instances of his being when he actually walked onto the battlefield in order to halt the killing which was taking place. Compromise was the central tenet of his teachings on need only look at the life of the Buddha to see the respect with which he treated women. The Buddha launched the first women's liberation movement in the world. He stated that men and women are intellectually, spiritually equal. He showed that he really believed in this by admitting women to his order of nuns just 5 years after monks entered his order. Women, just as men, were capable of and should strive to achieve the exalted spiritual state of nirvana. And a husband having a duty to honor and respect, love, and be faithful to his wife. A wife's primary duty being to love as virtue. He stated that women should be learned and knowledgeable, hardworking. To summarize briefly for my last remaining minute of time, that CIHR is conducting its activity through this path of Buddha. We stay away from the extreme forward or backward or extreme left or right. We choose the middle path. Within the near future, we have contacted Dr. Hema. The Institute will launch another program training Bali school or Buddhist school teachers nationwide, numbering not more than 500 teachers on how to teach human rights and democracy in Buddhist school. This way, we can help our Buddhist monks, young and old, to know exactly what to do in trying to promote the respect for right and human dignity in our new society. Again, I thank you very much for your attention, and may we all be blessed and be filled with metta, karuna, mudita, and upekha. Thank you.
Thank you. Venerable bhikkhus, venerable bhikkhunis, sisters, and friends. I'm very pleased to be here today and to share so much with you. I want to speak about something a little different, about Buddhism in America, but specifically about the Buddhism of Khmer women in America who have emigrated to my country during the last few decades. I have met some extraordinary women there, and basically I want to share their stories with you. Let me give you a little background first about the situation of Khmer refugees in America. Almost 250,000 Cambodian refugees now live in the United States. They've come to America during the last 3 decades in 3 waves. The largest wave came in the wake of the Khmer Rouge period, 1975 to 79. After 1979, a large number of people came to America. When they got to America, they settled largely in large cities, especially on the west and east coasts of the United States. The majority of Cambodian refugees in America came from rural backgrounds. They had received little education in their homeland, and they arrived in a new country with very few skills that would enable them to find employment and to make adjustments to such a very different society. Many, in fact most, had lost several members of their families during the Khmer Rouge genocide, and they arrived in their new homes traumatized by these losses and by their own experiences under the Khmer Rouge. Terrifying escapes across the border into Thailand and settlement and refugee camps to await emigration to Western countries capped their suffering. With such a history, Cambodian survivors have had difficulty adjusting to life in a country as different from their own homeland as the United States. Many suffer from chronic health problems, both physical and mental. Families have been fractured by generational conflict as children go to public schools and become Americanized, while their parents remain at home, unable to understand the social system and unable to question it because of lack of fluency in English. In many families, parents and children no longer understand each other. Literally, they no longer speak the same language. Disarray of Khmer families in the United States is one of the greatest tragedies of these refugees' experience. This is a bleak picture, and those who work with Khmer refugees can be easily overwhelmed by what they see from day to day. But this is not the whole picture. There are certainly many successful There are several Cambodians who have emerged as leaders of Khmer communities who are trying to help their compatriots heal and restore the kind of family and social cohesion that they remember from their own lives in Cambodia. There is some disagreement among researchers about the position of women in traditional Khmer society, and much research is needed before a definitive portrait of women's roles and influence in pre-1970 Cambodia can be painted. It is true that Khmer society gave primacy to men as heads of families. Women, however, also, as mothers, held positions of great respect. There were undoubtedly significant differences in the way girls were raised in families belonging to the urban middle classes as opposed to rural families, especially after Cambodia won its independence from France in 1953. New educational opportunities for girls after 1953 were especially important. Although public schools were opened at that time to all children from all social backgrounds, rural families were far less likely to send their daughters to school than urban middle-class families were. The Khmer women who have emerged as leaders of their communities in America often came from middle-class families and were well educated as young girls in Cambodia. The sense of self-respect and determination that they now exhibit did not just come from their public school education, however. It came from the nurturing of their families, and that nurturing was thoroughly grounded in Buddhist values. Her family was prominent and well-to-do in Phnom Penh, with close connections to the royal family. There were 10 children in the family. When Somali was 4 years old, her mother sent her to the royal palace to study Khmer classical dance. She loved it. It became the joy of her life. Somali continued her intensive study of classical dance at the palace until the coup of 1970. After that, she continued to train privately with her teachers from the palace. Somali was 16 when the Khmer Rouge took control of Cambodia in 1975. She was young enough to be assigned to a work camp with other members of her family. But because of that, she watched her parents die and most of her brothers and sisters. Of her whole extended family, only 5 survived. She believed she herself was saved by divine, that means the Buddha's intervention. Somali travels all over the United States and Canada performing, lecturing, and teaching about Khmer culture and Khmer dance. She performs solo, as well as with her own troupe of dancers and a full orchestra of Khmer traditional musicians. She trains young dancers herself, including her own 2 daughters, who are very accomplished performers as well. One of her special joys is working with children. Many of her workshops are conducted for American students in schools, colleges, and universities, but she also works especially devotedly with Khmer adolescents at risk of getting involved with drugs, with street crime, etc. Americans. No matter who her audience is, her goal is to contribute to the preservation of Khmer culture, which was nearly destroyed by the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia and is in danger of slipping out of the grasp of young Cambodians in America. For Khmer children, her teaching and her presence is like a lifeline to their own precious past. She believes neighbors from Asia really need to know. Spreading knowledge of Khmer culture through her art helps to open the minds of Americans toward the Cambodian people and thus benefits Cambodians as well. Somali is a very strong, very lively, very outspoken person. She has tremendous confidence in what she can do. And her parents were the ones, she says, who instilled this strength and confidence in her when she was a child. It was her mother who was strict about how her children should behave. What her mother taught them was simple: do what is good, avoid what is bad. Fundamentally, that meant harm no one and no thing, and do not look down on other people no matter what their place in society. Somali's mother herself was strong and certain of her course in life. Somali loved and admired her mother, but because of her mother's sternness, she didn't feel really close to her. It was her father who was playful and easygoing, for by the time Somali was born, her father was old and retired. In his prime, he had been stern also, but when Somali was a little girl, she was his joy. He played with her, he gave her great attention, and she loved him. Her mother was her great moral guide and model. Her father was her playmate. When she was a child, Somali was sent to the pagoda every day with rice for the monk her family supported. He and the other monks told stories to the children that were meant to make them want to be good. They were simple stories told in simple language, and Somali loved to just sit and listen to this monk, who became her guide, her guardian, her solace, her helper in time of need. He always understood what she needed and was there to help, she felt. This monk was the third great moral presence in her life, along with her parents. They all had explicit things to teach her, but she learned most from the example of their own conduct. I'll have to skip a little bit because of time. Now in the United States, Somali tries to do good always, and she feels enormous respect and love for her parents who taught her how to live, of her generation and older, because they grew up wrapped in a cloak of love and security that was enough to build a life on. The respect and love that bound parents and children to each other in the traditional example. Somali strives to instill these values in her 2 very modern daughters in America. She says it's the most difficult thing she's ever done. I can believe it, I'm a mother too. Somali is a survivor. Everyone has something in them that helps them make it through troubles, she says. Her make it through thing is faith in Buddhism. She learned it as a child from her parents' words, the monks' stories, and the good actions of them all. And she has a strange feeling about her own Buddhism. She says she's not a proper Buddhist. She doesn't meditate the way she was taught to. She doesn't go to pagoda regularly. There is none close to where she lives. But nonetheless, she does her own form of meditation, at least once a week, frequently more often. She has an altar in her home, which she set up, and she simply sits quietly in front of it and meditates. And this keeps her together and gives her the strength to, her strength is restored. Her parents and her monk are all dead now, but the foundation of faith and a way of living that they nurtured in her gave her the inner resources that made this young Khmer woman a leader among her people in a new world. Tien Vi Quo, or Vi as everyone calls her, was a different kind of person. She grew up in a town near Battambang in western Cambodia. Her family was prosperous. Parents had many children, but a great many died in infancy. She was the youngest. She lived in a large extended family. She grew up surrounded by nurturing parents and older siblings who were constantly caring for each other. And that's the model for life that she learned to follow. In her family, everybody cared for each other, everybody took care of each other, and that's what she learned was to be her way in life. As she grew older, she took responsibility in her own family too. It happened that her father valued education highly. He was an educated man. He urged some of his children, not all of his children, to become educated, especially Vi. And she pleased him by going to college, graduating, becoming a teacher in a private school. However, Vi's mother and some of her sisters remained illiterate throughout their lives. But during the Khmer Rouge time, she was sent to a work camp near her parents and siblings, and she too watched many of her relatives die. Her mother died, her brother, most of her sisters, nephews and nieces. She escaped. She spent 2 years in refugee camps, finally came to America in 1982 and began to work on a master's degree in family therapy, which she felt was another way of doing Buddhism, of practicing Buddhism. She also founded in 1982 Khmer Health Advocates, which is a health organization, the only health organization in southern New England which offers mental health therapy to Cambodian people in their own language. She has plans for the future that go beyond what she's been doing with Khmer Health. She wants to establish community centers, basically, that help to recreate something like the cohesive communities that she believes existed in Cambodia when she was growing up, where people were friendly and caring toward each other and helped each other through times of difficulty. She wants to try to help people to set up this kind of a close-knit community again in America. And she also wants to help these people become or teach themselves to become able to succeed in American life by gaining the skills that they need to find good employment and to build strong families. So she's trying to retain the best part of Cambodian society in a new setting while helping the Cambodians to become good Americans, in effect, to combine the two. This is a very tough task, but she says if she regards herself and her compatriots as victims, who's going to do anything? They'll just sit there and die. Someone has to try, and it's a difficult task. Day2, like her loving grandfather, she says, she thinks he's the most wonderful person in the world, and he helps her hold her life together. She feels that by helping to heal others, she also heals herself. She finds that reaching out to others without expecting any repayment actually repays her richly with a sense of pleasure joy at being able to help others, and this makes her a healthier person too. She says that all of this are Buddhist values, family values. Buddhism and family are one and the same, in her opinion, in Cambodia, and that's what she wants to retain of Khmer culture in America. She wants to make sure that survives so that people can thrive in their new homes. Her mother taught her compassion. As her mother lay dying in a work camp in 1976, her brother was also there, and the brother was very angry at his mother, and he ranted and raved at her and said, "Why can't you save my life?" And the mother simply treated him gently with compassion. She had no harsh words for him. She had only compassion. And she told V just before she died, compassion is all the legacy I have to give to my children. Compassion, the compassion of your mother. And that's what V has preserved. That's what she lives on. She believes that this compassion that she and so many other mothers, Khmer mothers in America, practice toward their fellow people is the heart of Buddhism, and it is what she wants to make sure lives on. Thank you very much.
Assam, India. I have been listening to our learned speakers with rapt attention. So I have got some questions, but long questions anyway. I was asked to be brief. May I ask Dr. Hema, my first question is, what is the original religion or faith practiced by the Cambodians before Buddhism appeared in the kingdom? Before Buddhism appeared in the kingdom. And next question, what is the origin and the historical background of the Khmer and other ethnic people of Cambodia? Yes, other ethnic people of Cambodia.
Yes. In historical records is, as I mentioned, to Sona and Uttara in the 3rd century before Christ. But now there is evidence that Funan existed in the 4th century before Christ. But we do not still have any evidence of religious activities during that time. But there is a lot of external evidence to show that about the same time, 3rd century before Christ, but really the origin of historical origins talking about, I'm putting both questions together. It will save time. The Mons and the Mon Khmers, Mon from Burmese part of the region and the Khmer from the other parts of the region. And later came the Chams, the Malays. But there is no language now that remains, only no Mon language, but more Mon kind of race, very small ethnic tribes. They are now for Mon and Chams. So the Khmers would have been very much the dominant. There is a lot of evidence in my own research from Thailand part, Malaysian part, in several parts, the Cambodian inscriptions, Khmer script was found. So then the origin, the historical Brahmanism very much was the religion of the royalty, of the court. It was the religion of the court. That is how also very much Sanskrit became the predominant lingua franca of the region. Later only Pali became the language, very much later, from about the 6th century in the region, because of the Buddhaghosa in the 6th century, the commentator Buddhaghosa. So Brahmanism, Shaivism, Vishnuism existed alongside also Mahayana, and in certain regions Theravada, or if you want to call it Hinayana. So Brahmanism was a very, the predominant religion of the court. And Sanskrit was also the religion of Mahayana or the Hinayana, certain sects. Does that satisfy you? Okay. Worship, spirit worship all over Burma, Thailand, Sri Lanka to some extent, all over the spirit worship and the cults, animism are there. They remain still, and they have been beautifully absorbed into Buddhism. Beautifully, so wonderfully absorbed into Buddhism all over Asia.
To the presentation by Dr. Nancy Barnes. I have been in that region over 7 years, and I've been aware that there are some really good research interests as well as religious interests, including some cultural attractions and all of the great interests of the local people. Now, I would like to ask you a question about the role of non-Cambodians, meaning the predominant Americans in the community, if I'm making sense to you. Because Cambodians in the United States who are migrated have their own internal structural things going on. And I have some, I assume that you been probably taking some specific roles to support these Cambodians as an American. And that's sort of the interest that I would like to know more about. And if there's any direct interaction between migrated Cambodian women and the Cambodian women here, so that they can share their experiences instead of other people speaking for them. Yeah. That's something that I would like to hear.
What it is that you wanted to know, but anyway, I'll do my best with an answer. Okay, first of all, about the roles of Cambodians in American society. I think you're asking for a broader picture of how they get along in American society or how they're accepted in American society. Is that correct? Yeah. Well, anyway, if not, you tell me. First of all, the Khmer communities tend to be quite fragmented in many places. They have great difficulties in getting together on a lot of issues, which is one of the reasons that Kennedy Kwok wants to help bring people back together, to get them to network with each other and to communicate better than they have in the past. It's a very disintegrated social group. And there are places where the communities are quite small and the pressures on them from outside are especially great. There are terrific problems in America, in Khmer communities, with gangs, young people, kids in gangs, and crime. A problem. There are things like violence. There are now problems with the American government because of the recently passed laws that restrict federal aid to immigrants, which is shameful. And there is some attempt now to improve the situation for immigrants to get them some of their benefits back, because a lot of the second part of your question about the Khmer women in the United States contacting Khmer women here and trying to help each other and teach each other. Yeah, there's a deal of going back and forth. For example, the two women that I spoke about today come back to Cambodia frequently, very frequently. Somali in particular, she comes about once a year at least. There have been some attempts to set up organizations or sort of self-help groups here in Cambodia by Khmer women who are now living in America. And I think, as far as I can tell, much of the effort has come from the Khmer women in America side, coming back here and trying to teach some of what they have learned to Khmer women who are are still living here. But I think that eventually there's going to be a bit more a reciprocal interaction too. But it's a very powerful cooperation across, well, half the world that really is going on. And I think very promising as far as I can tell. I hope I answered at least your question.
Buddhism as a tool for human rights, right, and democracy. And I have a simple question to put. How far Buddhism has been able to contribute in promoting human rights in Cambodia in view of present-day context?
Buddhism can contribute to the promotion of human rights in the current situation of Cambodia? Thank you. Well, first, like I said in my presentation, most of us are Buddhist. And if we ignore Buddhism, look like we live without a culture. I can compare to a tree without root. It can fall down, the society can fall apart. On the contrary, if we stick with our root and culture and tradition, we stand strong and we flourish as a community and as a society. It is true that a Buddhist monk sitting up high here, preaching Desana, and military general flat on the floor, cross-legged, concentrate and listen to the teaching of Buddhism. And that's the powerful contribution to the behavior and the attitude of the generals. Even though you can see killing here, killing there, attack there, but one cannot expect Cambodia to be perfect. In any given society, in New York, States too, even in New York, each day how many casualties and what kind of degree of human rights violation. Yes, I admit that there are some, but compared to before the UN organized election in 1980, or even before the time when Buddhism was allowed to flourish again, it was terrible. But now, since the growth of Buddhism into this Cambodian society, I should say the revival of our culture, we can see the tremendous reduction of violation, the tremendous growth of understanding, respect for human and also the respect for women. Human rights situation has been improved beyond expectation. Because traumatization as a result of the 25-year-long war really bothers the whole nation. And with what's going on nowadays, I see there is much improvement in the society. There is hope in there. There is hope that we all can do something. Your presence here to the Cambodian people. You also contribute to the revival of Buddhism in war-torn society. So my answer is yes, a tremendous impact to building this society in a peaceful and harmonious way. That's why the Institute we stick Buddhism in our activity. Thank you. Respected, highly considered in our society. To give short examples, the arresting of the police officer arrested a suspect of a theft, walked him to a Buddhist monastery for the police station. The chief monastery the abbot. Run across the abbot, and the abbot say, police officer, may I ask you to hand him over to me? Believe it or not, the officer, authority, bowed, venerable him, and we hope and help him. You see, they put trust in Buddhist monks. In those days, culture was valued than law, because our culture is our law from our hearts, not law on paper. To me, it doesn't make any sense if you have laws, but they are all on paper. But our culture and tradition is law from the heart. And then, but took the suspect to his monastery and say, can you give whatever you had this morning, today? Your evil activity, your evil thought, your evil deed, all the bad things you have done so far, give it to me. So it remains only purity. And if you can offer yourself to Buddhism, you'll be very happy to order and become a Buddhist monk. And it happened like that in many occasions in our old days. I myself, another experience. I was not a good boy. I was a bad boy. A terribly bad boy. Yeah. My first education was in Buddhist temple. It's a temple school. My father took him to the and said, Venerable, is now the son of Buddhism. He belongs to me. Whatever you can do, please let him just have his eyes back. This is the Khmer expression that you can do whatever you like, but a good idea as long as he becomes like everyone else, a good child. In the monastery, I was not beaten. My father said, you can do whatever you can and keep eyes for him. The monk didn't do that. The monk gave him good guidance, simple things. What do you like? I like to be treated fairly. Oh, in that case, you can start by treating people the way you like to be treated. Simple. This concept is not at all a complicated thing. We all want peace. Why don't we deal with peace? Simple like that. And easy to understand. Okay. Look at that guy. He's a wicked kid. One day he will be beaten. Why? Because he started the thing. So it's the result of his own deed and his own action. You don't want to be beaten up. Think of beating any people up. You know, we as children talk that kind of thing. And it's so simple. And I learned from that very simple concept. So of course Buddhism has quite an influential, really respected and listened to. The couple always have, you know, sometimes you have trouble between husband and wife. But the elderly lady are always listened to. Our ma or nun. And the nun is a very simple thing. Do you love each other? Yes. You don't need to beat others up. Love each other, speak love language. Simple. Of course, introduce some of Buddha's teaching, like I just said, which is loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joys, and impartiality. So all this is there, it's the tone of our society. Why is it going on now so controversial? We lost something. We lost not something, but a lot of things. Again, I appreciate your coming here because you contribute to rebuilding something. We need to rebuild the strength in our morale. Right now, we have an imbalance between rights and morality. The UNTAC 1993 election came up with complete rights, human right there, human right there. People somehow exercise their right beyond boundary and jeopardize other people's right. In Buddhism, there are human rights. សេរីភាពសិទ្ធិមនុស្សក្នុងគុណធម៌ Yes, that's the right thing. If you apply your liberty without morality, sooner or later you are going to run into some problem within your own society. Again, yes, my answer is yes. Buddhism is quite influential in our society. Not only in society, but within our day-to-day conduct. Trouble because somebody forget their own conduct this way. I don't mean other religion don't mean anything, but we talk about Buddhism, yes. It's our so we can properly conduct our life together with other members of the society. Thank you.
Nunneries there are in Cambodia, and whether they are equally spread in the provinces and how they are organized. Just a bit.
Because it is part of the culture that the Donjis are living inside the Vats. It means not to with the monks as they share the room or so. They have their own huts inside the Vats, and they are members of the Vats, and they have also to obey the discipline, and are in this sense by the abbot of the Vats. So it is, I think, we hope at least so, I think for the future, build nunneries as independent places. So for example, in Gompong Sam province, in the Wat Otre, we have one representative here. This is a place where nuns are dominating in power, because it is a very remote, it was sort of not even rebuilt because there are no people living around this place because of insecurity in the past. So it was a chance for the Donji to settle down there and to there are 3, 5, or even 6 months living at the moment. So in this sense, it is also not as you would understand the term.
I have a quick question and a request. First to Mr. Kassim. Could you elaborate on what you see as the major challenges women's human rights in Cambodia, whether or not you think these are questions can be addressed at this point in time